Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. Tonight, we're diving into some horrifying, disturbing, and completely unexplainable Reddit stories. And trust me, these ones are wild. You've been loving the series, and I've been having a blast making it. Every story today is creepy and unsettling, but the fourth one? Yeah, that one actually freaked me out, so definitely stick around till the end. Huge shout out to all the Reddit authors. Links to the originals are in the description. And hey, don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Alright, let's get into some unexplainable Reddit horror stories. Since he said I was a huge fan of horror stories, he told me there were posts that felt unsettlingly real, more discovered than written. Then, while doom scrolling, I saw one. It started as a Reddit post on a small cybersecurity subreddit. The username was deleted, but the title stayed up for a while. If your camera light flickers, don't move. Most people laughed it off, another weird internet copy pasta, except this one came with screenshots, grainy photos, blurred faces, and one line of text that stuck with me. They watch through what watches you. I remember scrolling through the comments. Some were joking, others asking for context. Then there was a top comment from a user named Don'tCLCK. They already turned it on. You won't know which camera yet. The thread was locked within an hour. The mod said it was fear-mongering, but a few people reposted screenshots, and that's when things started to get strange. 2 nights later, I woke up around 3 a.m. to the faint sounds of static. My phone was charging on my desk, screen off. I thought maybe a notification came in, but then I saw it. My webcam light flickering, just for a second. Then again, I remembered the post. My chest went tight. I covered the webcam with the sticker and went back to bed, telling myself it was a glitch. The next morning, my laptop was open on a Reddit page. The post was back up, but the title was different this time. If your camera light flickers, it's already too late. And my username, my own username, was in the comments timestamped while I was asleep. It's here. I tried to delete my account. I changed my passwords. I even emailed Reddit support thinking I'd been hacked. They said the account was inactive and inaccessible. They didn't explain what that meant. That night, my phone camera turned on by itself. I saw my reflection on the black screen for less than a second before the light blinked out. Then a notification appeared. From Don't Chilk, request sent on November 7th at 9:39 p.m. When I opened the app, there wasn't any text, just a link to a live thread. It auto-played. The screen went black. Then a video loaded. A grainy live stream. At first I thought it was a loop. Same angle, same dim lighting. Then I realized it wasn't. It was my room, my bed, my laptop. Someone was watching me in real time. The comments were flying too fast to read. Handles I didn't recognize, all repeating one word. Still. Then another username appeared. Sit death. Don't move. They get more excited the more you participate. I froze. I didn't breathe. My phone vibrated again. New message. Same user. Count to 10. If the light turns off, you're safe. I counted. 1, 2, 3. At 5, the light went out. I threw my phone across the room. By morning, the thread was gone again. Deleted from everywhere. Even the cached version 404'd. People on the subreddit started arguing if it had ever existed. Some said it was an ARG. Some said mass hallucination, but then others started posting screenshots of their own devices, laptop lights flickering, phone cameras turning on for no reason. The captions were always the same. Did anyone else see the user? Don't click. 3 days later, someone compiled all the images. They noticed something no one else had. In the background of every photo, reflected in black screens and windows, there was always the same shape. A pale outline, a tall figure, always standing behind whoever took the photo. Last night, I saw it myself. I was on my phone, scrolling through the subreddit again, trying to convince myself it was fake, when my front camera flickered on for half a second. I was alone in my room, but in the preview window, I wasn't. There was a shape over my shoulder, faint, stretched, almost like a blur. But the longer I stared, the clearer it became. White, still, watching. Then the app crashed. The post disappeared again, and my phone buzzed with one final notification. Thread continues soon. I checked Reddit again this morning. My account's gone. My posts, comments, everything wiped, like I never existed. But a new thread went up 10 minutes ago. Same subreddit, same title. If your camera light flickers, don't move. And the top comment? It was again from Don't Silk. They already turned it on, you won't know which camera yet. I knew it didn't end. It became a cycle, an endless loop stitched into my life. Each day I have to figure out which camera they've turned on before the betting starts. And if I don't, they make sure the next stream has something worth watching. Just before my 11th birthday, my grandfather had invited me along for a 2-day hunting trip in the deep woods up north, close to where he'd grown up as a child. He'd been going there his whole life and said it was good ground for deer and that the air always carried the scent of old pines and wet moss. That morning couldn't have been better. The sky was pale blue and the air crisp enough to sting a bit when you breathe deep. We walked slowly down the trail, taking turns with the binoculars to look at birds. He'd point out their names like he was listing old friends. Around noon, we found some late-season lingonberries and filled a small tin cup before moving on. A few hours later, we met another hiker coming down the trail. My grandfather greeted him by name. He was an older man with a red jacket and a face that looked weathered but kind. They started talking about local fishing spots and timber prices, things I had no interest in at the time. The sun was already approaching the horizon, casting orange light through the branches. I remember thinking it'd be nice to find a place to camp before dark. So, being young and impatient, I told them I'd go ahead a little to look for a spot. My grandfather just nodded and said not to go too far. The forest was quiet, apart from the wind and the occasional distant bird call. I spotted a small clearing just off the trail and pushed my way through a wall of pine branches. That's when I saw it, a tall, thin shape standing among the trees. At first, I thought it was a dead spruce, its bark stripped away and rust-colored. But as I walked closer, I realized it was made of metal. The rusted pole was crowned by a traffic light. Its lenses were cracked and the signal housing was coated in a thin layer of moss. Yet there was a light inside, a faint green glow, flickering every few seconds like a weak heartbeat. I stood there staring, trying to make sense of it. There were no roads anywhere near this part of the forest, no wires, no sign of anything man-made except the traffic light itself. I remember thinking my grandfather would get a kick out of it. I jogged back to where he was still talking with the other man and told him I'd found something cool a bit further up the trail. He humored me, as he always did, and they both followed me back to the clearing. When we reached the spot, the traffic light was still there. I pointed at it, excited. "Do you think there used to be a road here? Maybe an old neighborhood or something?" He didn't answer. I looked back at him. Color had drained from his face, and his eyes were locked on the light. The other man looked confused and was about to ask my grandfather something, but before he could speak, the green light had faded and was replaced by a yellow. That was when my grandfather moved. He grabbed me and pulled me tight against his chest. "Don't move," he said, his voice trembling. Then he called out to the other man, "Stand still, don't move a muscle." The forest went silent. No birds, no wind. I could feel my grandfather's heartbeat quickening. "What's going on?" the man asked, his voice edged with a tone of confusion. I heard him take a step, maybe two. Then came the scream. It started sharp and turned into something animal, long, broken, echoing through the trees until it suddenly cut off. I felt my grandfather flinch slightly, but he didn't loosen his grip. We stood there for what felt like forever, frozen in place. The air smelled of metal, and the low humming seemed to come from all directions at once. My hair lifted slightly as if an electric charge was building overhead. Somewhere far off, a bird called, breaking the silence. My grandfather suddenly let go of me. He stumbled slightly and struggled to catch his balance before sinking onto a small rock. His legs shook from standing still. I looked up at the traffic light. It had changed back to green. As we walked back to the trail, my grandfather had his arm wrapped around me and told me to keep my eyes closed. I wasn't supposed to look, but I did. A quick glance as we passed the remains of what had once been a person. A pile of clothes lay on the ground, charred with thin wisps of smoke rising from them. The surrounding grass was stained dark red. Our trip was obviously cut short, and we made our way back to the car in the dark. Since then, I've asked my grandfather multiple times over the years about what he saw after the light presumably changed to red, but he has refused to speak of it. As far as I know, the man we met on the trail that day is still listed as missing by the police. I think my grandfather knows more than he lets on about what we found there. I've thought about going back there for years to see if it's still there, but I haven't dared. Not yet. The Aurora Borealis has been waving over these Kansan skies the past few nights. It's absolutely breathtaking, and something I never thought I'd get the chance to behold. I didn't think it'd be one of the last things I saw, though. I don't recommend you look if it's over you. See, an hour ago, I was watching some horror drama series and smoke, happy as can be. My black lab Shadow started pawing at the basement door, which is my signal that he needs to relieve himself. My cigarette was done anyway, so I put it out, paused my stream, and tossed my phone to the couch. I've heard about the northern lights making their way to our skies, seen pictures from my friends, but hadn't gotten the chance to see it with my own eyes. When I walk out onto my back patio, it's nearly pitch black. Nothing new, considering all my neighbors, aside from the one directly next to me, have kids and go to bed rather early. Everyone's got homemade privacy fences via some trees and very overgrown weeds, which lends a hand in blocking any light. Shadow darted off into some corner of the yard, as he always does. The air was chilly, so I pulled my sweater just a little closer around me, and that's when I saw it. The pink lights dancing in the distance. They weren't directly over my head, but if I stood in one particular spot, I could see it. At first, I almost cried. It was beautiful. It waved and danced and made me grateful for being alive, being on this planet, and getting to experience things like that. I stared at the sky for what felt like forever, until the grass rustling and a bark grabbed my attention. I shouted my dog's name as I walked back towards the back door to my home, ready to slide it open for him, but tried to peer through the leaves of our redwood tree for one final glimpse of the rare phenomena before heading out. Shadow's collar jingled just as he ran past me into the house. Even though I'd heard his footsteps, he seemed to almost appear out of nowhere from the shadows and into that moment of light. He was running so fast he was a blur of black as he ran past me inside and up the stairs. I felt my heart skip a beat but chalked it up to anxiety from smoking. I locked the door and closed the blinds before heading back to continue couch rotting, but stopped in my tracks when I got to the top of the stairs. Shadow was standing in the middle of my living room, staring at me. I laughed at myself and told him to stop being creepy. Figuring we could both go for a little treat, I walked past him and into the kitchen. An ice cream pop for myself and the pig ear for Shadow. Normally, the crinkle of the bag is enough for him to come running. I'd all go put it back, and he still hadn't come to claim his prize. I call his name again, then peer out into the living room. The ice cream in my hand falls to the floor as a scream rips from my throat. Shadow looked like Shadow, but was now actively morphing into some stretched and skewed version of him. I heard snapping as he grew unfathomably, quite quickly I'll add, before his neck became too long to hold up on its own. His head fell to the wooden floor with a thud. My dog, or what was my dog, smiled, then with its newly elongated limbs, started pushing its still bursting body towards me with too fast of a pace. I don't think I've ever run so fast in my life. The stairs to my attic area where my bedroom is are luckily accessed through the kitchen. I sprinted up them straight to my room and slammed my door shut just as two large of paws thud up the stairs after me. I've always loved that my space has hidden pocket doors, but now I'm not so keen. Just as I turned the tiny lock on my door, the door started shaking on its track as the exploded version of my dog started banging on it. I thought myself brilliant for choosing my bedroom over the office, or the closet, since this room is the only one of the three with a window. The first thing I did was race over to my window. It opens right to the roof of my attached garage, which would make for a relatively easy escape. I was halfway there, feeling the rough shingles under my bare feet, before I looked up and noticed my next-door neighbor, Hunter, staring out of his window and directly into mine. I yelled his name, telling him I needed help, but he just stood there, staring at me. He smiled quickly, raising his hands up for a moment. Then his smile faded as his hands moved down slowly. He did it again, and by the third time, I was already terrified. He made it worse when the fourth time he kept his hands raised and the grin plastered on his face. He stared at me, then wiggled his fingers. Had the lights in his room not been on, it'd have been impossible to read his lips. They were on though, and as I read the words gotcha, he too started sporadically snapping and stretching into something inhuman. I scurried over to the edge of my roof, and just before I leapt over the edge, a shadowy figure in the middle of the road shifted, scraping the gravel beneath it. I froze and watched it for a moment. When it didn't start exploding, I felt relief, which went away as fast as it came when the figure started running towards me. I screamed again and then looked back into my bedroom. The door was holding true, but banging against its track like nobody's business. Another glance to Hunter, still in his window peering over at me, showed that he no longer resembled anything close to human. He reminded me of those snake fireworks that you light and they just grow and grow until they turn to ash and fizzle out. All the color had removed itself from his skin, his eyes were gone, and he just kept stretching. I thought, "F this," and crawled back into my bedroom. That's when the banging on my door stopped and the singing started. I'm verily, merrily, but here quite contrarily, why don't you let me in? Don't be afraid, I'll be quick, let you live, promise I just want your skin. Why don't you let me in? I scrambled for my phone for almost a full minute before I realized I left it on the couch. Thankfully, my laptop still has a little bit of juice in it. Shitty thing is, none of my messages will go through. I can't send chats, emails, nothing. I've run out of options, so I'm going to try posting this as a last-ditch effort. I'm not sure what to do. Has anybody else experienced this shit? What the f do I do? The thing that took over my dog won't stop singing the same thing over and over, though the lyrics have changed in the last few seconds.
Why don't you let me in? Let me in. 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 If I don't make it through the night and it comes out that I've been found as a curled up ashen turd, please heed this warning. Whatever is making these Midwestern night skies pink and red isn't the northern lights. I think it's something evil. If you do get a glimpse, you might just want to let them in. Because right now, that's the only thought running through my head. That and a jingle that's becoming incessant enough I'm starting to hum it. Quite contrarily, I'm here, and verily, merrily, I think I'll let them in. I won't be afraid. They'll be quick. Let me live. They just want my skin. I think I'll let them in.
Okay, here goes. In 2010, I was fresh out of college with a degree in archaeology. Archaeology jobs, as you can imagine, are few and far between. I was working in catering when I got an email from my old professor. She wanted to let me know about a government program I might be interested in. Said program was an archaeological initiative to uncover possible remnants of the first human settlements in the Americas. Some years prior, human footprints had been discovered in New Mexico dating back some 23,000 years, some 9,000 years earlier than what we had previously thought the earliest human settlements had been. It might be hard to understand how mind-blowing this was to the archaeological community. Because of this, there was a gold rush to the Southwest, everyone hoping to find the next big breakthrough that would forever alter our knowledge of human migration. The government program was ostensibly only for students as a cost-cutting measure, but given my interest and prior research into the late Pleistocene epoch, she had made a special accommodation for me. The only catch was that I would have to leave my home in Michigan and move to the deserts of New Mexico for 9 months. I didn't hesitate. Despite what happened towards the end of the program, the first 5 months on site were some of the best of my life. I was stationed at Dig Site Romeo, an area I later learned that the local indigenous tribes had specifically told us not to go. I had all but given up on any hope of fulfilling work in the field. At best, I might be able to land a quiet job in the caverns of some university, staring at shards of pottery under buzzing fluorescence, slowly driven mad by the yellowing lead paint and lack of sunlight. But here I was, in the burning heat of the New Mexico summer, my body becoming tan and lean as I poured through the ancient dirt. Were we digging up pottery? Of course, but they were fresh to us, newly awoken from their time in the soil, plucked like crops from a garden. We would gather around it like a newborn as centuries of darkness were wiped from its exterior. A quiet understanding between us that this thing had a life we could hardly imagine, and it had survived so that we may look upon it once more as the treasure it is. I miss them, the other researchers. How when the sun settled behind the horizon and we had washed away the dust from our skin, we would gather together around bonfires, aching from the day's labor, and eat together. We sang songs, shared stories from back home, discussed articles and research papers, told of our hopes for what our futures may hold. I met Kara there. I'll never forget when we first met. Before we grew close over those few months, how I would watch her laugh by the fire, her knees tucked up to her chest and her short raven hair flitting in the breeze. I remember seeing the fire's reflection in her eyes and wondering if it was really a reflection after all. Then we found it. I still feel the tightness in my chest, feeling the energy around Romeo. It began when as a flat stone buried beneath the soil. I couldn't place the stone entirely. It looked crystalline, smooth as glass, but opaque and the color of charcoal, completely alien next to the yellow-white earth of the New Mexico desert. We dusted the stone gently, expecting an edge, but none came. The perfectly even stone slab stretched beyond the borders of the pit like a marble floor. It was during my shift in the pit, when we started expanding outward, that I heard a trembling voice exclaim something in a panic. Words. He had found words, at least a few errant, unrecognizable runic carvings cut into the stone. As we dug further, those words became sentences, unreadable, but undeniably sentences. Further still, more words, but strangely in a complete separate form, another language, still unknown to us. When we finally laid down our shovels, the entire team stood around the edge of the pit, staring down at this vast rock with its unrecognizable etchings in the center. No one smiled. Our faces hung, numb with awe. Some wept. No one spoke. The only sound in the desert was the wind around our ankles and the distant screech of a vulture. I don't know what forced me to turn my head, but I did, and peered over at a hill on the horizon. I saw 3 figures there, watching. Natives. I couldn't help but feel they knew, somehow, what would come from this. A few researchers walked on the slab, as if they could glean any more knowledge of it from 20 feet below. Mandelson, a senior researcher, laid down on his S, his ear pressed to the stone. Fuck. I remember him saying, "Fuck, it's not a slab." "What do you mean?" someone asked. "It's not a slab. It's hollow on the other side."
It's hollow. This isn't a slab. This is a roof.
We stopped the bonfires around then. Everybody went to their tents, refused to speak, just stared into the middle distance. Even Kara and I, holding one another on a single camp bed, couldn't find any words. We should have been excited. This was the most incredible archaeological discovery since the Rosetta Stone, but all we could muster were a few murmurings in the night. We all watched as Mandelson chipped away at the roof. It was like watching Carter casting light through the walls of Tutankhamun's tomb. When he finally created a hole large enough, a light was lowered down. "Christ, it's huge," Mandelson muttered. But he saw nothing, not even the bottom. The hole was enlarged. A team was going in. In any other archaeological discovery like this, the students would be tearing at each other at a chance to volunteer. This felt more like a draft. 5 students were to accompany Mandelson below. Kara was one of them.
They were down there for just 20 minutes or so. I pulled Kara up out of the pit and asked her what she saw. She was white as cotton. They were like barrels, she whispered, not looking me in the eye. I felt her trembling. It was the last time I saw her whole. Kara, Mandelson, and the rest of the team died shortly after. Their symptoms were all the same. Vomiting, burns. They rotted as their hearts kept beating. The site was shut down, covered up. Officially, it never existed. The researchers who spent their summer there aren't to talk about it, aren't to make contact with anyone else involved. I haven't left Michigan since returning home. I don't know what that thing was out there. I don't want to know. I want it to stay buried. I miss you, Kara.
When I moved into apartment 3B 3 months ago, the landlord gave me only one warning. Mrs. Chen in 4B is particular. If she knocks on your door after dark, whatever you do, don't smile at her. I laughed it off. Just another eccentric neighbor story, I thought. Mrs. Chen seemed normal enough during the day, a frail woman in her 70s who shuffled down the hallway with her shopping bags, always wearing a surgical mask. She never spoke, never made eye contact. The mask never came off, even inside the building. But I started noticing things. The walls in my bedroom shared a connection with her apartment, and some nights I'd hear sounds. Not crying, not exactly talking. It was like someone practicing different emotions in a mirror. A laugh, then the same laugh but slightly different, then again and again, for hours. 2 weeks ago, my neighbor across the hall moved out suddenly. When I asked the landlord why, he just shook his head. She smiled. Last night, I was up late working when I heard the knock. 3 soft taps. I looked through the peephole. Mrs. Chen stood there, still wearing her mask, but something was different. Her eyes. They were too wide, too excited. I knew I shouldn't open the door, but she knocked again. Then again, each knock more insistent. "I know you're there," she said, her voice muffled behind the mask. "I can hear your heartbeat. It's smiling." My heartbeat can't smile. That didn't make sense, but I felt it, my chest tightening with the instinct to grin, to laugh off the absurdity of it all. The knocking stopped. I waited. Then I heard it. The sound of a key sliding into my lock. She had a key. The door opened slowly, and Mrs. Chen stepped inside. She moved differently now, fluid, deliberate. The surgical mask obscured most of her face, but her eyes locked onto mine. "You have a beautiful smile," she whispered. "I've been watching it. Through the walls, when you talk on the phone, when you watch television. It's perfect." She reached up and pulled down her mask. I wish I could forget what I saw. Her mouth, it wasn't one mouth, it was dozens of them, stitched together in a grotesque patchwork across her lower face. Young mouths, old mouths, thin lips, full lips, All of them moving independently, each one wearing a different expression. Some were smiling, some were screaming, some were just frozen. "I've been collecting for 40 years, she said, and all the mouths moved with her words, creating a horrible chorus. But I'm missing something. Yours would complete my joy collection." I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Every instinct told me to run, but my body betrayed me. My face, God help me, I felt my face pulling into a smile. And not because I wanted to, because my muscles responded to some primal trigger, some nervous system override. "Yes," she hissed, reaching toward me with skeletal fingers. "Give it to me." I don't remember what happened next. When I came to, I was on the floor. Mrs. Chen was gone. My door was locked from the inside. But something was wrong. I went to the bathroom mirror. My face looked normal. Same eyes, same nose, same mouth. Except when I tried to smile, really smile, I couldn't. The muscles wouldn't respond. It was like that part of my face had been turned off. I touched my lips. They were cold, numb. That's when I noticed a thin surgical line along my jaw, so precise I'd almost missed it. And from apartment 4B, I heard it, my laugh, my exact laugh, playing on repeat. She didn't take my smile. She borrowed it. And tonight, she knocked again. 3 soft taps. This time, she wants to rest. Thanks for watching, guys. My favorite story tonight was definitely the one about the dig site. Which one was yours? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.